Will the Texans be aggressive this offseason? And if so, what is in their way of being aggressive? It is SNL, Landry Locker, Cody Stoots with you. We're talking Texans offseason as the combine is approaching, then free agency, and then, of course, the draft. Cody, we have some news involving the salary cap, some other talking points when it comes to the Texans here on SNL. Subscribe on all podcast platforms as well as here on YouTube. But I understand that you kind of want a certain mindset, a certain approach by Nick Caserio and D'Amico Ryans this offseason.
I sit here and I think about what they did last offseason, and I'm not expecting them to recreate last offseason. They spent over $100 million in free agency and keeping guys around. There's some things that you need to pay attention to in the future, but we worry too much about the salary cap. As people that consume football and pay attention to it, we worry way too much about the salary cap. Like there's far too much worry about, you got to pay Will Anderson one day. Oh, you got to pay CJ Stroud one day. Well, Derek Stingley's contract's coming up. There's too much worry about that. If they feel like one of these guys that's coming up in free agency is a game changer and it makes them a much better football team, go and get him. If that's Trey Smith, go get him. If it's trading for a guy that you have to then pay, like say DK Metcalf, go get him. If it's trading for a guy that's already paid and he's got big money, go get him. This salary cap, everything's too expensive. They didn't have any money. That can't be an excuse when they are where they are right now. I mean, they went and spent $100 million last year, plus the Stefon Diggs situation that doesn't get counted in the free agency spending because they traded for him and then pushed a bunch of his money up to the front part of this. And that was a team that felt like they were ready to put their foot on the gas and really accelerate where they are. And so then a year later, they're just going to kind of, that guy's expensive. Can't do that. Well, that's too much. Look, Titus Howard's contract comes off the books in the next couple of years. Laramie Tunsil's contract comes off the books the next couple of years. Daniil Hunter's done after this year from a contract perspective. You can move on for some other expensive players after this upcoming season. And then the salary cap keeps going up every year. There's these exponential jumps in the salary cap. They're going to get new TV deals in a few years. Throw a bunch of money on the back end of these contracts. Go get what you need to be a successful football team now. Stop worrying so damn much about the future, worrying about the salary cap in 26 and 27 and 28. Go be a good football team now. If you identify players that can help you, go spend, go be good now.
See, I get what you're saying. I don't necessarily agree. I think that the mindset that you have would have been the appropriate mindset in the last few years. Like I have no problem with it the last few years. I almost feel like the mindset that you want and the mindset that you're speaking of, I think that time has kind of passed. And I do think it's time to worry about these contracts that are going to eventually be there. I think the aggressive window that they had during CJ Stroud's rookie deal, I think it's kind of passed. I think they made mistakes. I don't think they handled it very well. They went and got Stefon Diggs. Not great. $16 million dead cap. Don't fault them for making the deal, but it didn't work out. They extended Titus Howard. They gave Shaq Mason the contract they gave him. On defense, they made some good moves. But eventually, and I think we're on the opposite ends of things, like these guys, you're going to have to pay these guys. And if you're just recklessly spending money in free agency and being aggressive like you're talking about, it's going to bite you in the ass. And you're going to have to make tough decisions. And I don't know that there's a recipe for success is just going out there and aggressively signing free agents. So I disagree with you. I think the problem is that they've made such moderate moves with the mindset that you're speaking on that it almost feels like they haven't been as aggressive as they've been. Like missing on Diggs or the Diggs deal not going according to plan, I don't blame them for that. Daniil Hunter, good job. But their aggressiveness was along one of the weaknesses of their team with the offensive line and some of the other things. So I think that's the problem. And I think they are kind of transforming into where they're going to have to find guys. They're going to have to figure out how to find guys as opposed to just being aggressive in free agency and aggressive like you're talking about.
No, so I'm not sitting here advocating for some willy-nilly just overpay for a bunch of these guys, but I don't want to sit here and talk about, okay, well, Trey Smith's just too expensive. Kansas City Chiefs right guard who's set to be a free agent. Well, he's just too expensive. Okay, well, we're worried about the second contract for CJ Stroud when he's not going to make it because they can't block for him. I'm not saying go out there and spend all your money in free agency. That's not what I'm advocating. But if you identify a couple of players that can really improve this team in 2025 and would be players that will be here in 27, maybe 28, go out there and get those guys. I'm sitting here and I'm looking at what the Texans are paying a bunch of their contracts. Like I'm looking at how many guys they have under contract and the overall value of their contract. They got 3 guys that have a contract valued more than $50 million. The Eagles have 8 of those guys. It's like either you don't know how to manage the salary cap, which is possible. Maybe they operate a lot different than the Eagles. But the Eagles signed a guy for $50 million last year who didn't even barely played for them. They won the Super Bowl, and they've already paid their quarterback $255 million. He makes over $50 million a year. CJ's not making over $50 million for another 3 years. It's like, go out there, find players. Don't let the price and the salary cap commitment to them be the hurdle that keeps you from being a good football team.
Yeah, well, the other thing that the Eagles have done is, on top of putting together a good core, they've been able to find guys at bargains. Like Mekhi Becton was a failed first-round pick, and they found him and they turned him into a good player. They did. There's many examples of them doing that on defense. What the Eagles did is, while Jalen Hurts was on his rookie contract, they put together the perfect core of players with a lot of depth. And then in the next step, they were able to find guys that were bargains that weren't highly priced players. Now, Saquon, obviously they spent money on Saquon, but I would argue that it's time for the Texans to find guys like a Mekhi Becton. Like everyone talks about Smith, and he's a good player. He's the best guard, but free agency, I think Mike Meltzer says it, by definition or whatever, you're overpaying for guys in free agency. The Texans need to find a way to find guys that maybe are disappointing, maybe are kind of bargains, and kind of build those guys up as opposed to just being aggressive and spending money.
Yeah, you could do both. You could do both. The Eagles paid 5 guys after they paid Hurts. Massive contracts. They paid both wide receivers after they paid Hurts. They paid one of their guards after they paid Hurts. They paid Bryce Huff, who's the guy that just did nothing for them last year, after they paid Hurts. Like the Texans haven't even paid Stroud yet, and we're acting like, oh, well, don't have the money for it. Just it's not there. It's already put it away. Can't break that piggy bank. It's like, okay, all right, I guess if you want to operate that way, but that's just, again, I understand that a lot of really good teams don't always spend in free agency. They just draft well. They do have the Mekhi Bectons, the reclamation projects that their coaching staff just coaches up. I get that. The Texans have some issues that some money could go about fixing, in addition to get a guy, coach him up, make him a better football player than he has been some other places. And I just feel like people are so worried about 3 big contracts that, yes, they're very big contracts coming down the pipe. Like Will Anderson, CJ Stroud, Derek Stingley, those are all going to be very expensive contracts. I very much understand that. That is 2027's problem. That is 2026's problem. That is 2028's problem. That's not 2025's problem. And I understand you do need to plan a little bit. Okay. That's when some of these contracts would be coming off the books, when the players that I just talked about would be making gigantic money.
Yeah, I mean, it's like credit card balance. Like you can go into debt and balance it out. I think the salary cap is not a flat cap. Like they can say it is, but there's ways to maneuver it. There's ways to fudge it. There's ways to figure it out. Swarm in the super chat here on SNL. Landry Locker, Cody Stoots with you, talking about the Texans' aggressiveness.
Swarm.
Or lack thereof. Dotology, would you go full Rams mode and trade picks for stars? Hell no.
No, because
absolutely not.
And obviously the Rams won a Super Bowl, so it worked for them. Look how good their guy is at drafting. I mean, they just got the defensive rookie of the year. like when he actually had picks, and then he got him a partner in crime there in the second round in Braden Fisk out of Florida State. It's like he drafted Verse and Fisk. They hit on Puka as a fifth rounder a couple of years. They draft really well. Caserio drafts pretty well. You look at last year, obviously Kamari and Kalen Balak were fantastic. And then the year before, good job. Like he's got plenty of draft pickets. I don't want to take away his capital in this. Now, the right player, the right situation, maybe I'd have a conversation. Like if there was some game-changing defensive tackle that became available, okay, maybe I'll move off a second-round pick to get that guy. But I don't want to take ammunition away from Caserio.
Jared M asks on the soup, if CJ has another bad season, do we start asking questions or do we give it another season too soon? Worried by all the hate he's getting. I don't think, look, CJ Stroud's going to be here for a long time. It's just a matter, I think at this point with the CJ Stroud thing, it's a question of, do you have someone that's closer to one of these upper echelon guys, or do you have a guy who's closer to like the Derek Carr, Trevor Lawrence type of thing? I'm not saying that to like compare him to the players. I'm just saying my point is that it's inevitable that he's going to get a hefty contract. It's just a matter of how good is he. The market is going to make it to where CJ Stroud, whether he has 3 more seasons like the one we saw last year, or he has 3 excellent seasons, and really it's just 1 because he's going to be eligible for the extension after next year. He's going to be one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the league. That's just the way it is. That's just the way the market is. Nobody really faults Jacksonville for paying Trevor Lawrence. It's just kind of a weird situation to be in once you do such a thing. But no, there's not going to be any scenario I see where the Texans punt on CJ Stroud, regardless of what happens in the next year, 2, 3.
Look, it's going to be very much a reality of he's either going to feel like he's absolutely worth the contract, or you're going to have questions about it and worry that you did sign him to the contract. He's getting a contract. If Trevor Lawrence can get paid what he got paid with all the question marks surrounding him, CJ can absolutely get paid, get a big number. And then the real thing is in your gut, when he signs that contract, you're going to be like, he's worth the money or he's not worth the money. And you're going to know. You're going to know in your gut. He's not worth the money or he's worth the money. And so his goal in 2025, in this third season here, his goal should be establish that he's worth the money, make it an easy contract to feel comfortable about signing.
Yeah, I would say he has, his floor, I think he has the Garoppolo or Trevor Lawrence floor where you're going to get paid. Like you're going to get paid. It's just a matter of, are you doing it because quarterbacks are hard to find and you're okay? Or are you doing it because you feel like this guy can take you to the promised land? And that's why this is such a key year for CJ. I heard Caserio today with Sean and Seth on 610. He was talking about, the offseason of CJ Stroud. He said something along the lines of, adversity can make you the best version of yourself and it can create the most self-improvement. And I agree with that. And then it was kind of asked about how he's approaching this offseason compared to last. Obviously not doing as many interviews. And I'm not saying that that's not going to help, but it's also not all choice. Like if he would have had a better year, there probably would be more options. I don't think CJ Stroud is like the toast of the league like he was at this point last year, whether it's his own fault or not. So we'll see how it looks. But the reality is it's inevitable CJ Stroud, whether we see what we saw last year or a worse version, or we see the best being yet to come, he's going to get paid.
Correct. And then we'll all know right away if he feels like he's worth it or not. Just looking at these big contracts for quarterbacks, it's like, okay, we all knew Mahomes, Burrow, worth it right away. Trevor Lawrence didn't feel worth it when he signed it. Herbert, worth it. Lamar, Josh Allen, worth it. Jalen Hurts, you could argue, I don't know, a lot of people thought he was worth that money. Here he is a couple years later. So maybe CJ's in that territory. Yeah, he's not worth it, but he's got the talent to make it worth it. That's kind of, I guess, where Hurts is or was. Maybe that's where Stroud ends up. But you'd prefer him just have a sweet 2025 and then just feel good about it when he signs the deal.
Yeah, that's what you want. But it is going to happen. So are you saying they should be in on Smith? Like, what kind of aggressive move do you want to see? Like, what are we talking about?
Go get Cooper Kupp. If the thing is about, the Rams, they don't want him because the money. Okay, go get Cooper Kupp. Okay, you got the money, figure it out. You can adjust some contracts, you can move some money around and give yourself cap space. If you feel like Trey Smith's the best option to fix your right guard spot, go get him. Go get him. Make him the starting right guard. Let him start paving the way. You think that guy'd bring a little bit of juice to the locker room, having been a guy that had to work for this giant contract that he's going to get, like after being a 6th-round pick, after being slept on, goes through, helps Kansas City win some world championships. Hey, that's not how we did it in Kansas City. Well, we don't really want to hear about that. Okay, you don't want to hear about how being a champion? All right, that's fine. I'll just go do my job then. I know Trey Smith can block the guy in front of him. Go get him. You want to go sign the Falcons center who's a free agent because he's a better center than the guys you have? Go get him. Okay, you want to see what these wide receivers cost because you need to draft one and sign one. See what Chris Godwin costs. Like the money is, yes, you've got to create the money. The cap space right now, whatever it is, $7 million. Hey, you got to go about creating the money. It's pretty easy to create the money. Teams do it every year, and it's not like the Saints, where they've done this for 7 years in a row and they're about to go through hell. By the way, the Saints were doing it for players that weren't very good. Like, I'm not advocating to go in here and overpay some slappy. Like, I know Chris Godwin's good at football. I know Trey Smith's good at football. I know Cooper Kupp's good at football.
Yeah, the wide receiver thing I think is interesting because it's going to be it was going to be a need no matter what, but now you have a situation where one of the guys that you expected to be there is not going to play football this year. And I thought that was one of the biggest luxuries. And I think that was probably factored into why they decided to handle the Diggs situation they did, because in a perfect world, you thought they were going to have this 3-headed monster at wide receiver, and you hoped that Tank Dell was going to get better, and you were going to have Nico Collins under his extension, and you were going to have Tank Dell on a rookie deal. And a day 2 rookie deal at that. So very, very cheap. Now you don't have neither, and you have that. So it is almost like it's almost an unexpected expense as well with the way that the Tank Dell thing went down. So I do think that does need to be taken into account. I think they planned for a certain thing. And then I think the worst case scenario happened with Tank Dell to where that plan now, it might add to what you're talking about, where you have to be aggressive and you can't be selective because now you only have one wide receiver that you trust. And oh, by the way, John Mechie and Xavier Hutchinson, the other young guys, didn't really take that next step either. Yeah,
It's something that they've got to find a solution to, and they need more than just one solution. Like there's really not a lot of movement that can be had with the offensive line room. They have so many guys under contract, unless you're going to jettison some of these guys, which they probably should. They probably should get rid of Shaq Mason. They probably should get rid of Kenyon Green. Change of scenery, probably do Kenyon Green well, and Shaq Mason, you just can't play him right now. So there's 2 spots. Kendrick Green's a free agent. You can create some room that way, but there's room in the wide receiver spots. Like you got Nico, and that's the only guy that I'd tell you today, February 19th, is guaranteed to be on the roster at wide receiver next year. That's the only cat.
Yeah, and that's the only one you should really feel good about.
So
if we're being honest,
if you can find another guy, Godwin, or the trade for Cooper Kupp, we hear, the Rams got to get rid of him because of the money and this and that. Okay, well, go get Cooper Kupp. You can move the money around a little bit and make it work with Cooper Kupp. Like, go get a guy that we know is going to be on the team when they break camp and get ready for week 1. Because you've got one of those guys at wide receiver right now.
Just one. Yeah, just one. It's the wide receiver position. I know the offensive line is like the source of frustration, but the wide receiver position it's more of a crucial need right now. I know that's crazy to hear, because the offensive line, obviously you need a good offensive line to be able to move the rock, but the wide receiver it's the more crucial position right now for the Texans. They are very, 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 very weak at wide receiver as we sit right now, as weak as anyone in the league, quite frankly.
Yeah, they got one dude and nobody else after him. Now, their one dude is better than some of the other teams that only have one dude. But you're still bottom 10, bottom 8 when it comes to wide receiver rooms. It's not good. It's not good. So
It's bad.
Yeah. And again, like I just look at what they did last year. That's kind of like Caserio operates in those little, he doesn't call them windows. He calls them something else, but he talks about how it's like you section off and you work, not year to year, but in little sections that include a couple of years. And like a year ago, I wouldn't have like explicitly told you like they have to go get one of the top linebackers on the market, but they did. They went and spent over $10 million on a linebacker. I wouldn't have told you that they have to go get one of the top guys at defensive end. Now, they tried to get a defensive tackle. Armstead seemed like he wasn't that interested in what they had to say, and it seemed like Jacksonville had pretty good amount of cash to throw his way. It worked out. They went and spent it on Danielle Hunter instead. Like, yeah, go out there, identify some guys. If they cost money, they cost money. You got to improve the football team. Like, they're not going to get better they're not going to get better to the point where they need to be by just Nick Caley being a better coach, some of the defenders they have getting better, and a couple of bargain free agents and a draft class. Like, that's not going to be enough. Like, you're not getting in. You're going to smash right back into the divisional round wall if that's the entire offseason. So
yeah, I also think, man, like the way in which this is going to work is they're going to have to, if they have a draft this year like they did last year, I think they're on the right track. Like if they can repeat what they did in last year's draft, I think they're on the right track. If they can hit in free agency with a buy low, with the buy low mentality and hit like the Eagles did on Becton, or some of these teams hit where you're able to do that, I think that's going to be the recipe for success. I'm always hesitant to buy high in free agency because it just doesn't seem to work. And that's the thing for me. Like, these top guys, more times than not, Cody, it seems like 90% of the time when we're talking about, man, they got to sign Smith, man, oh man, Slayton would be nice. 2 years after the fact, at minimum, we're talking about those guys just being bad examples of bad contracts. And that's what scares me when it comes to free agency. The wide receiver market, and I think this is the good news, the wide receiver market is actually, it's opportunistic for the Texans. The Texans actually have a pretty decent opportunity in the wide receiver market, multiple areas to get stuff done. Offensive line is going to be interesting because it seems like, and I'm not saying it's the wrong approach, but it does seem like the young guys are just immediately dismissed. Like, it doesn't even seem like, and maybe that's kind of telling, and maybe it is the reality of the situation, but like, it doesn't seem like anyone believes that Juice Scruggs can be a really, really good player. It doesn't seem like anyone believes that Jared Patterson can be a quality starter on this offensive line. It doesn't feel like, it feels like there's a belief that the Texans need 3 interior offensive linemen. And I'm not pushing back on it. I'm just saying that's what it feels like people feel. And you have a second round pick who they've liked for a while, who they've given every opportunity to, that in a perfect world you hope is at least going in a make or break year. It doesn't even seem like that's the fact. It seems like when you talk about mock drafts, when you talk about signing guys, it's, we basically need 3 interior offensive linemen and we just need a complete overhaul, which isn't realistic. And I also think it's either a symbolic of an even bigger problem, or we're being too dismissive of the possibilities of these guys actually getting better.
I mean, it's just, there becomes a numbers game where you can't go and get that many guys, but you can't just run it back with the same crew. Like, I'm not advocating for 3 brand new faces, but I'm also not advocating for 3 familiar faces either. Like, there is certainly a middle ground that you need to find. Like, you can't go get Trey Smith and the Falcons center and whoever the best left guard is and just plop them all in there in the middle. Like, you can't do that. Like, I'm aware of that. I just, again, if they sit there in their free agency meetings and they say, yeah, actually he'd solve a lot of problems, whoever he is, money can't be the reason you don't get him. Like, that's what I'm landing on here.
Well, the other question I have is,
like, guys are expensive. I get it. Like, but you look at, and I'm using a very recent, and it's very recency bias. Like Robert Hunt, who is a former Dolphins player who went to the Panthers last year. He got a $100 million contract. Was he worth $100 million? Well, you're worth what somebody would pay you. The Panthers wanted to go to $100 million. They desperately needed to fix their offensive line. He was one of their biggest investments last offseason. They got better on the offensive line. You saw this year, Bryce looked better. Once the offensive line settled in, the offense settled in. That thing looked better. And they really only made one super significant change, which was a $100 million overpaid right guard, or offensive guard. So, like, sometimes that thing, even if it's expensive, can be super helpful. Like, even if you don't feel comfortable giving the guy the money, it still can be super helpful. The Texans feel like they could be better, much better even, with one better guy on that offensive line, to me.
It's SNL here. Landry Locker, Cody Stoots with you. Less than a week from the combine, free agency approaching. Back to the super chat. David White says, if they run it back with the exact same O-line, this organization is not a serious one. I agree with Cody. I don't disagree with you, and I don't think that there's any chance in hell that they can do that. A lot of this is just talking it out, because I've failed, and yet I'm still trying to make sense of what they're doing on the offensive line. They aggressively spent money on guys that just didn't fit. Here's my question, though. And this just kind of hit me as we were having this discussion and as we were looking at the chat. So Caserio has said this now. D'Amico has said this now. You've heard Nick Caley say a different version of this now. So 3 guys who are going to be in charge of this offense, the most important guys in charge of this offense, making personnel decisions, adding talent, developing current talent. The 3 guys have all said the exact same thing. You don't want to fit a square peg into a round hole. Basically saying you don't want to be married to a system. You want to maximize your players. You want it to be player driven, all that type of stuff. When they say that, like, naturally you start thinking about offensive skill guys. You start thinking about Dalton Schultz. Is there any chance that Caserio, Caley, D'Amico are talking about the offensive line when they say this?
Absolutely.
Because we focus on the communication, but is there a chance that they're looking at any of these offensive linemen that are hated, deservedly so, because as a unit they've sucked? But is there any chance when they say this that maybe they're talking about some of these offensive linemen? If not, then who could they be talking? Or if so, who could they be talking about?
I mean, that to me is the, I guess, the square peg round hole of this whole offseason theme was, a lot of the offense was wrong for the players that we had. And if we change the offense, we're going to make those players better. I'm happy to have that happen. If that's the case, you've got to plan for the fact that maybe those guys aren't any good, though, too. Like, you watched them go out there and disappoint in 2024. Like, you still have to have a plan that maybe those guys aren't good in a new system and another system that maybe better suits their skills and things like that. And this is something you bring up, and I think you asked me this either on the show the other day or when we were talking. Why did it work in 2023? Like,
yeah, that's the confusing thing to me. And it's not really a dream scenario for me, because I just don't think these guys are good. Like, I don't feel like this offensive line is good. And I think if you're stuck with them, which might be reality, then yeah, you would love to have a coach that is capable of making as good of a situation as possible out of a non-ideal situation. I agree with that 100%. You want that no matter what. Like, whether your players are awesome, whether they suck, whether they're somewhere in between, you want that no matter what. That's the bare minimum. My thing is, though, I just don't. I don't see a scenario where it's like it's going to look really, really good with these 5 guys. I just do not. I do not see that. So when you're saying this, yes, that it almost feels like the bare minimum. You know how like at the end of a season, whenever a team sucks, like you hear like what is the biggest like badge of honor for a coach when a team sucks in football at the end of the season? What is the biggest badge of honor?
They tried hard.
That's the bare minimum. Okay. Like I always hear that. It's like this team sucks. Well, you know what? They kept playing for the coach. Well, great. Like that is awesome. That's the bare minimum. Like making players as good as possible is the bare minimum for a coach. I know it's been kind of glorified because we lived a year. I'll just say a year. I won't say it was always the case, but we lived a year of Bobby Slowick being unable to do that. So it seems like it's some amazing thing where it's like, oh, wow, we're going to get a coach that tries to get the best of his players and he adjusts accordingly. It's the bare minimum. We weren't in that reality last year. That's the bare minimum. Like if that's what you're hanging your hat on with Nick Caley, that's the bare minimum. Like that's it. That's all that is the bare minimum.
Yeah.
So when they say that sounds awesome because of what we were living in, but it's also, I've said this 100 times now, it's the bare minimum.
Well, here's another thing about we're going to maximize our players' skills. What if you had players who had better skills? You'd have more to maximize. That's my thing. Is like if the guys were better, you'd have more to do. You'd have more to maximize. That's another element of like adding to this offense.
And this is the other thing that
maximize what these guys do well. I'd hope so, but like if they had better skills, you'd have more to maximize.
Yeah, I also think the relationship between offensive coordinator and offensive lineman last year was a toxic relationship. In other words, I think
you suck, I suck, we suck.
Bobby Slowick was the victim of a poor offensive line as much as maybe the offensive line was a benefit of Bobby Slowick and how he coached. I think at the bare minimum, it was a wash, and I might actually lean more towards the offensive line. Now, that doesn't eliminate Bobby Slowick's inability to manage games late, his inability to get through to his quarterback, his inability to maximize the skills of his best players. He needed to go. But just from that relationship, offensive line and offensive coordinator, I think that Bobby can probably make a case that he was fighting more of an uphill battle than the offensive linemen were.
Well, if he tried to make that case, he didn't make it well enough because he works for the Dolphins now.
Yes, he does, and he's an offensive coordinator who doesn't call plays. So that's just kind of where we are with this whole thing.
No, he's a pass game coordinator now.
Whatever the hell he is. Whatever. He's what he was in San Francisco with Mike McDaniel.
And he's not even the main pass game coordinator. He's like the pass game coordinator assistant to the regional pass game coordinator or something.
Good for him. He's going to be watching film and he's going to be making PowerPoints, whatever the hell Bobby Slowick wants to do. Good for him. Congratulations, Bobby. We love you. Best of luck. But we'll see how they approach this whole thing. We'll see how this thing gets approached in the offseason. I just the aggressiveness, you kind of scare me when you start talking about paying for top tier free agents, especially on the offensive line, especially a wide receiver with where it can be expensive. And the other thing is, I think the Texans are a destination to where the market's kind of favorable to them, to where I don't know that they have to go out and get these big names. The Cup and Debo thing is going to be interesting because I don't know if the Rams or 49ers are even going to be able to trade them. And it might, I think with the cost, like much like how you're saying that the salary cap can be changed, I don't think the cost of what Debo and Cooper Kupp appears to be right now is going to be the reality of what they cost the Texans. I don't think that's going to, I don't think that is like it. That is not, I don't think that's going to be the price.
I agree. I would agree with you very much.
So that's something to keep an eye on there as well when it comes to names, wide receivers, et cetera. I don't think you can eliminate too many possibilities when it comes to the wideouts.
No, I mean, I'm open to almost every non-T. Higgins scenario. I just don't buy the T. Higgins thing.
There was an article in the Cron today. Jeremy asks, do you have any notes, any thoughts on the renovation of NRG or building a new stadium in Houston? Jonathan Alexander had the report. I saw B. Scott had a nice in-depth analysis with one of the investigative reporters over at the Chronicle on his podcast.
I'm always, my biggest thing would be, where's a new stadium? Because there's not a lot of land in Houston where you could put a new stadium. So where's a new stadium? Because if you're talking about a stadium way out west or way up north, I'm out on that idea. I'm just out. If you had like a spot where I understood, okay, this stadium, this area, like, within Houston, I get it. But so many of these stadiums, I mean, are so far away from the central part of the city that I'm, based on location, is where I'd be from a new stadium situation. I also, from the renovation, the one thing that was this article mentioned is apparently it's impossible to do any renovation from April to September when the Texans need the stadium. Like, I know the rodeo gets out of there.
The rodeo.
Like, the rodeo gets out of there by April. Like, they get the dirt out of there. So, like, April to September is not enough time to do the renovations that you need to do to this place. Also, what renovations need to be done? Like, maybe I don't know some of the intricacies of, like, the renovate. Like, I think the video boards look nice. Like, the seats are pretty comfortable.
I would be fine with it going to the burbs, honestly. I think downtown Houston has done a really crappy job of just the complete manner in which they've handled the roads, the limitations of getting to the stadium. I think it's been one of the most pathetic displays that I've seen by a large city. To be honest, I don't know where it goes in the burbs. I don't know where the land is, but I'm open to hearing all things, because the way that they've handled, like, even like going downtown, even the 610 loop right there, they took all that time, and it's even more difficult now. Like, whoever's designing these roads, whoever's making these decisions, is awful. And I think that they've done a better job of making it easy to get there, but it hasn't been good enough. Like, logistically, some of the stuff that goes on downtown and the way that they handle the stadium, it's been an unmitigated disaster, to be honest. So I'm open to any and all suggestions. I see engineers saying the Woodlands, that's a disaster to get to as well. That's already a disaster. You can't even go out there on Sunday from my neck of the woods in less than 90 minutes. So I don't know where the land is.
It's Katy. It's west. It's going out west. That's where it is.
Let's go to Katy, baby.
I just don't understand what is, and someone will have to explain this to me, because I don't think you have the answer. I don't think our chat has the answer.
That's pretty hurtful. That's a hurtful assumption.
The Superdome opened in the 70s. You're telling me that they can constantly adjust and update and renovate the Superdome all the way from the 70s to the point where every 5 years they're getting big events and the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl, and then every year they're getting big events. Like, the Superdome can be constantly renovated to the point where everybody's content with big events happening there, but NRG Stadium can't be constantly renovated. Like, I don't buy that. For the Superdome opened at 75, and you can constantly renovate that to the point where every NFL media member who works for ESPN or NFL Network, the Super Bowl should be in New Orleans every 5 years. Like, okay, enough with that crap. But if the Superdome,
it should though.
But if the Superdome can be that good that you could put the Super Bowl there every 5 years, why can't NRG Stadium be that good?
Because it's not the stadium. It's the convenience. It's the city. Downtown Houston has not done it. They've done a better job. Like, it's better, like, in the convention center area. And the
about to jack that up. They're about to ruin that.
Where do you go? Like, let's put it this way. If I want to go to a Saints game or if a Super Bowl's in Vegas, like, I can go hang out before and there's walking distance. Tell me this. Let's say that you and I are going to the Texans game. Okay?
The area around the Texans.
Where do we want to go? Where do we want to go have a drink before?
It provides nothing.
You want to go to Papa's Barbecue? You want to go to Olive Garden? I hear Olive Garden's got a great happy hour, although I am a big fan of the espresso martinis once they get down to $4. Where do you want to go? Like, that's the problem. Right. It's not the stadium. Nobody says the Superdome's an awesome stadium. Well, it's that it's more convenient.
Maybe if they didn't have a giant eyesore standing next to it, we wouldn't have to have a conversation about moving the football team's stadium to a different part of the greater Houston area.
That is so much wasted space there. The Astrodome it is so much wasted space. It is so much wasted space. It is just the ultimate example of hoarding. And we've had this discussion before. I
can't, like, if you showed me, like, hey, all right, you know what? Actually, what we're going to do is we're going to take a huge section of Memorial Park and turn it into the Texans' new stadium. All right, yeah, I'll listen.
Yeah,
I'll listen.
Make that a poppin' area. And the other thing is, like, it's not just wasted space during Texans games. Like, we have the rodeo, man. The rodeo is like one of the greatest events in the entire world. Like, it's one of the like, I don't think there's another like 1 month thing that can even stack up to the rodeo, and you're wasting all that space there. But I also think it's just symbolic of the whole thing. Like, you can't go anywhere around there. Like, you can't, there's nowhere to go before the tailgating. Like, everyone's talking about, like, the tailgating's awesome and stuff. And I like the tailgating, but there's no other options. Like, there's nowhere else you can go. You literally, like, once you get on Kirby, you got to turn on Main. You got to figure all this stuff out. It's just,
yeah. The what they do, what's that thing called that they have in Arlington next to the Rangers and the Cowboys?
I don't remember.
Texan Live, isn't that what it's called?
Yeah, something like that. But even there, like, if you want to go meet for a drink before, like, there's a whole street of, like, bars and all that, like,
stuff. Yeah.
Like, there's barely there's not even like a B-Dubs or a Pluckers or something like that. Like, it's just a lot. It's a lot of cluster. I'm fine with going to the burbs if we can figure that out. Don't know. You're opposed. I'm not. I don't care. I don't care if it's in the city or not, to be honest. Colton says, turn the Astrodome into a Top Golf and pregame hub. Dude, you can't turn the Astrodome into anything. It's so dead.
Yeah.
Bo says Louisiana is the poorest state and New Orleans is a major destination. Come on, Cody.
Yeah, that doesn't have anything to do with renovating a stadium that was opened in 1975.
Not about the stadium.
That was the whole article was, new stadiums and places like New Orleans have made adjustments where they've added all this suite seating closer to the seats.
That's a bad article. Like, that's a bad article. Like, that's like that nobody, like, the Las Vegas Stadium is badass. You could put NRG in Las Vegas and people would still be saying, man, they should really have the Super Bowl here every 5 years. Same thing with New Orleans. Like, you could put NRG there. Do you like NRG? Like, what would you change about NRG?
As far as the stadium itself, I don't know. Like the inside in the building, what's there to change? What do people not like?
I think they need to make
the concourse isn't wide enough. That was another thing. Wider concourses. Why? Because everybody's fat. I'm a fat person. I get it. I understand.
No, they have a lot of space in the concourses. Actually,
concourses have plenty of space.
They do a good job of that.
It was like the other thing was bars and restaurants. There's TVs and bars all over NRG Stadium.
Yeah, inside the stadium.
Yeah.
Inside the stadium.
No, that was a comment, was new stadiums have more seating that's bars and restaurants in the stadium.
Yeah, I don't feel like there's a lack of that. I do think like the access, like getting into the blue lot, I don't think it's as easy to get into the parking as it probably should be, but yeah, who knows?
And look, I understand that you can't just, like, if you're the Texans, you can't just be like, hey, can I just eminent domain all this area and just knock everything down and turn it into a bunch of stuff? Like, I understand that's not how life works, but the city could do a better job of helping them put stuff around there.
David White says if we had, a lot of people like talking about the new stadium. David White says if we had the equivalent of Texas Live where the Astrodome is right now, it'd be legit. I'm down with Katy, I-10 West, all the way down for me. Dude, that's perfect for a place to hang out and watch the game. Like it's perfect. Like even more parking, whatever, just easier to get in, more entrances. Like it's absolutely perfect right there.
Yeah, I mean, look, if it makes everything easier to do and it makes the team more money, and they want to kick in some bucks. I think another issue is people don't want to pay for it on their taxes.
Yeah. How much is the taxes? Like, let's think. I think there's only 5 stadiums that aren't tax paid. Well, I saw that stat.
Well, the county still owes $1 billion from the 3 stadiums,
which is crazy.
Toyota, whatever they call Minute Maid now, and
which is crazy,
and NRG, like,
which is crazy.
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, which is nuts. Which I don't see how that is.
And if you're talking about a brand new NFL stadium, it's $2.5 billion. Like that's. I mean, you could probably get away with $2 billion. So it's pretty expensive.
Chase says they love copying the Patriots. Why not copy the Patriots? Dude, let me tell you this. I don't know if you've been there. It is the worst effing stadium in the world to get to. It makes getting to NRG feel like there's 20 lanes. It is garbage. No, I'm serious. It is the worst piece of crap journey ever. If you ever go there, you need to take the train. It's literally a county road, literally like a county road, like a small town county road where you can't U-turn. People are paying $50 to park 1.5 miles away just so that they can be facing the freeway. It sucks. And the crazy thing is the Celtics and Bruins spot, elite, badass, great. Fenway, amazing, fantastic. Gillette Stadium is hell to get to. It is absolute hell to get to. Awful.
Here's another thing
that place is a disaster.
Here's another thing that I don't know that a lot of do people care if Houston gets the Super Bowl? Like, is that something that I
don't know what I've never cared about that.
Do people care that the Super Bowl is in Houston? Like
when you say people, you mean like people in Houston?
Correct.
Yeah.
I understand it's massively profitable for the team in a certain way, and some portions of the town. Does the greater Houston area give a flying crap if the Super Bowl ever comes here again?
I don't know. For me, me personally, I kind of cringe because I don't feel like people like the outsiders going to have a great experience. When you have someone over to the house and you're it's probably not the right time to have someone over, and the house isn't clean, and the food's not good. You don't really feel I don't as someone who loves this city, works in this city, met my wife moved to this city. I have a kid here, trying to have another kid. I love Houston. I'm embarrassed when the Super Bowl comes here because I don't think it's as good of an experience as the other places that are put out there. I think having to go to the convention center is a disaster because you have to deal with all that traffic and all the disastrous streets of downtown. Then you have to go all the way from there to the stadium. I feel like that's a disaster. There's all kinds of traffic. I don't feel like it's easy to stay in the burbs and then enter the city, which I think it is in Las Vegas. I think you can do it there. I think you can do it in Louisiana. Here, if you're staying in a burb, it's going to take you hours to get here. So me personally, I kind of cringe when they have the Super Bowl here because I just don't think that it stacks. I don't think it represents like they want it to represent. I don't think the convenience factor is high enough, which is what media types, teams, et cetera, kind of value when that type of stuff, when those types of events come here.
Well, you know what they're not going to like is if they dump the thing out west of town, because the media people bitch about the San Francisco Super Bowls not being in San Francisco. Well, not in San Francisco. It's in wherever the hell it is. It's far away. Like some people, look, you're not ever going to be New Orleans. You're not ever going to be Las Vegas. And you're not ever going to be a crown jewel like LA is, where the NFL has portions of their business out there. So, if they found out, hey, you're never getting another Super Bowl again until you get a new stadium. Okay, well, then you got to wait till you get a new stadium a little bit further down the road. If the whole thing is about, well, it's about getting a Super Bowl, that's not reason enough for me to build a new stadium.
And the other thing is, like, I think it goes back to the discussion we had. It's, if you want to make it just about the stadium, you can make a stadium that stacks up to like Jerry World, whatever other massive, Las Vegas, like whatever other massive stadium you want to point to. When I think Super Bowl City, I think of convenience. I think of the whole week leading up to, not just the Sunday of, like the Sunday game. So if they want to, like, I think it would be just as important to fix kind of the surroundings and stuff as it would anything else. Like the World Cup's going to come here. Like, I'm guessing like they can stack up fine on just like a 1 day type of event or whatever, a couple days. Just the Super Bowl just kind of seems a little bit tough. I don't know. Dietology says to fix the Astrodome is $4.4 billion. They said also the area around is trash and not fan friendly. They need shopping, food, bars. Fact.
Yeah.
They just need to get rid of it. They might just need pavement.
Yeah. Pavement.
As much as anything else, but who knows? But yeah, to answer your question, I don't care about the big events being here.
I also like, I mean, is it that crazy to like, is it that crazy to ask owners of football teams to kick in?
Oh God.
Like,
Here you go.
Crazy.
Are the billionaires asking for taxpayer dollars?
I'm not sitting here acting like
my tax dollars don't need to go to billionaires.
I'm not sitting here acting like the city never benefits. They absolutely do. But is it crazy to ask when the city's already still footing the bill for the last place? Like, is it crazy to ask, like, okay, if we can kick in some money, but maybe this is all on you?
Maybe, yeah. I don't think that's too crazy.
I mean, I know that we can all go on Forbes and say, oh, well, the Texans are worth this many $1 billion and they should be able to spend their own money on a 2.5. I know that's not exactly how life works. Like, I know just because a team's worth that much doesn't mean, they're sitting there and Cal logs in and checks the bank account. It says $7 billion. Like, that's not how it works. I understand that aspect.
You think Cal, when's the last time you think Cal had to log in and check his bank account?
That's actually a great question.
Never. I don't even think he has the app.
So
do you think Cal McNair has the banking app on his phone? No way.
So I believe probably by the time he would have stopped needing to check the bank account, the apps weren't like prevalent. Like, that wasn't how you did it. So, yeah, he's probably never checked the banking. He's never had to log in on his phone and look.
No chance. There's no chance. There's no chance Cal's like pulling up the Bank of America. Oh, damn. How did that get there? Wait, we spent how much at River Oaks Country Club?
I would love to know what renovations need to happen inside NRG Stadium. Like, I just love to know exactly what that is. And I'm sorry for one summer random stand-up comedian can't have a random Saturday night at NRG Stadium because you're fixing it for football season. Sorry, Kevin Hart. You got to skip Houston in 2026.
God, I'm so tired of him. I'm so numb to Kevin Hart now.
Sorry, Tom Segura. You got to skip Houston in 2026. Like, or take it to the Toyota Center. James
says it needs a Chili's on the chat. Man, Don't threaten me with a good time, man. The more we need to up the Chili's game, man.
Trying to think what's right around. Like,
We need to up the Chili's.
I understand that.
What's by NRG? What restaurants?
No. I was trying to think of where I would put the Chili's. They have a giant area of nothing that is just used for rodeo parking, that where Astroworld used to be. Like, they tore down Astroworld and made it a parking lot. So, like, you telling me you couldn't put some stuff up there, and then it's a little walk across the bridge to NRG.
I feel like that killed the vibe, man. I feel like it was just like so much better to be able to see like the roller coasters from the street and like pull in. I just feel like it just killed the whole spirit and vibe of what that area was, man. It just crushed the spirits. And now it's just almost like an FU because they got the dome there, but it was cool to be able to drive up and just see like an amusement park, like in that area, like when you were going. It just crushes the spirit now for it not to be there.
Yeah, I probably haven't been to an amusement park in 15, 20 years. I still miss the Astro.
When's the last time you were in a roller coaster?
All right, go ahead.
No, I'm asking. Like,
go ahead.
Go
ahead.
I can't ask a question about when the last time you were in a roller coaster.
I was probably
without you making like some sort of assumptions.
I was probably 18.
Okay. What was that experience like?
I do not even recall the last time I was actually at like a amusement park. A theme park.
Do you think you would enjoy it now?
I think there'd be some rides that my fat ass would struggle to be on. Okay. So is that what you're getting at?
No,
do you think you'd be able to ride all the rides, Fatty? No, I don't think I'd be able to ride all the rides.
No, I didn't mean it like that. I was just asking, like, when's the last time you enjoyed the greatness of an amusement park?
I do feel like there's not very many things that can replicate like a real amusement park feel, like the Tower of Terror or whatever it used to be called, where you're sitting down and they, click you all the way up into the air and then you just drop.
No, and you know what they started doing now that's pathetic? Like they have like speed passes, and it's like you like pay more to cut the line, and it's like it's almost like when you used to go to Blockbuster, like for a millennial, and you had to like strategize, like when am I gonna be able to see this or this? Like if you got to the roller coaster at the right time, you just felt like better about yourself. Like it was like good. Now they have like speed passes, and now they have like speed passes for the speed passes, like for the speed passes. Like there's no like purity left in this world. And I feel like driving up to NRG Park, the old dome, all that, and just being able to see that character and everything that symbolizes the experience of the amusement park, the season pass for $75, $80 that pays for itself, to where parents can just drop their kids off and say, fuck off for 6 hours and I'll come back and pick you up. No cell phones either. Hey, meet right here at 6:00. And then you show up at 6:25 and your mom's pissed at you because you wanted to ride one last ride and she's pissed at you. But there's just the purity of that. The Astrodome, that's gone. But just seeing that amusement park pulling up, man, I just feel like if they would have just kept that up, that's what they needed to renovate to keep it pure. That's what they needed to renovate.
In the ugliest, nastiest backpack or whatever, you're taking your swim trunks because you're going to get in the water for half the day after you ride some of the rides, and you bring a paper bag or a plastic bag to put your swim trunks in after you change back out of it. Yeah. Man, it's getting dropped off in the middle of the 100-degree summer for Astroworld. Unmatched.
One time I was like late when my mom was going to pick me up, and me and my boy Todd took off sprinting like in the grass, and I tripped and I fell. I hit my shoulder, and I was like, oh God. I was thinking I was like in 4th, 5th grade. Like, oh crap. Blah, blah. Guess what I tripped over?
A speaker rock, a rock that was a speaker?
Nope.
What did you trip over?
2 people having sex. I'm dead serious. 2 people having sex. I was sprinting at the amusement park to the front. We got the last ride in, and I tripped over 2 people having sex. Must have been like some high schoolers or something like that. I'm just some snot-nosed elementary dude. And I guess they were just feeling a little frisky and just wanted to get it in whenever they could. Daniel on the soup says Texans make conference round and we get Cody and Landry on amusement park vlog.
You know what? I'll agree to it. If they make it to the conference championship next year, Landry and I will do a day at the amusement park.
Zach Rose says, is the salary cap increase real?
It is. I mean, it's you said this is one of my favorite things you talk about. So when you mention something that was wrong with the Texans in 2024, someone's like, that's not the main reason. Yeah, it was still wrong. When the salary cap increase happened, and it took the Texans from, a little bit of salary cap space to like a little bit more. Like it wasn't some massive amount. Okay. But then I see people like, well, every team got the salary cap increase.
It's true. They're right.
That is true. And while that's factually correct, yes, that's important. I don't give a crap what the other team's salary cap situation is. I care about the Texans salary cap situation and the fact that they now have, an extra $5 million or whatever it is to spend. Like that's a backup cornerback that you now got added to the potential spending if you want. Like
fact.
Like
but
other teams need other
Davis
things.
Mills. Davis Mills under contract though. We're good.
Cornerback.
Oh, corner. Okay. Yeah. True.
$5 million, a backup corner.
RGV Card Shop says, looks like you didn't get the last ride after all. Good job. It's very, very nicely done. Very nicely done by you. We'll see how this goes. It's fun times. It's going to get even more fun next week with the combine. Off-season stuff is fun. Stadium talks fun. I think it's a good local topic. And I think we have a little bit more in the bag than, tear down the Astrodome. It always goes to that, but it's not like the only go-to type of thing. I think there's other stuff to get into. So we'll see how it goes. Appreciate you all for joining us, subscribing on all podcast platforms. Tonight, I'm going to get into some things that Nick Caserio had to say at 10 o'clock on the stream. I'm also putting together a list of the 5 best and worst moves that Nick Caserio has made, which I'll drop soon. I'm having a hard time finding the worst. I need one more on the worst, but I already got the 5 best. They might surprise you. That'll drop sometime this week. And regardless of when it drops, regardless of whether you drop because you're tripping over someone having sex at an amusement park, when it comes to this Texan stuff, we're all in it together.
Eat good, sleep good, be good. We'll talk Texans again soon. Thanks for watching, everybody.